A warm welcome to another edition of Election360 here on TV3. My name is Martin Esiedudate. On today's edition, we'll take a very close look at what Dr. Mahmoud Bawumia, the flag bearer of the New Patriotic Party, has been outlining with regard to the youth and jobs that his government, if he's given the nod, will create or will roll out. Later, we'll also find out what's happening in the camp of the National Democratic Congress. Flag bearer of the party, John Dramani Mahama, is heading to the OT region. That's barely a few days after after Dr. Mahmoud Bawumia left the OT region. John Mahama is headed there. We'll tell you what exactly the voting dynamics of that particular region looks like, and we would also bring you Constituency Watch, this time around focusing specifically on the Amenfi Central Constituency. And before the show wraps up, we'll take a quick trip to the United States of America. We are a few hours away from that country going to the polls. They've been voting in the last few days, but on the 4th of November, it is the last day of voting. How is it playing out? We'll definitely take you on a quick trip of what's happening in the U.S. as well when they do go to the polls. Close race between Kamala Harris and Donald Trump. This is Election360. Stay with us. We have details of this and more coming up. All right, thank you for staying with us. Let's go straight into the big issues we have for you today. And the number on your screens clearly tells you how many days we here in Ghana have to go to the polls. We are voting on December the 7th, 2024. And if you count from today going, it is 33 days to election 2024. There are some key issues we want to raise or draw your attention to. It has to do with who has the power to print ballot papers. You would recall that the last few days, in fact, that should be on Thursday, Friday, the Electoral Commission visited a number of printing houses, Buck Press specifically. That is where they are printing the ballot papers for 3 regions. We'll give you some specifics, but there is a law governing who gives the order as to when printing can be done and who does it and under what supervision. So with 33 days to the elections, we want you to know that there is a law that governs who goes ahead to do a printing. If you're an individual and you decide to do that, actually, that is against the law. You could go to jail for that. We'll put that on your screen shortly so you're also in the know of what specifically is happening. So here is what the law says. It says, a person who, without authority, prints a ballot paper or what purports to be or is capable of being used as a ballot paper at an election, commits an offense and is liable on conviction to a fine not exceeding 500 penalty units, that's about 6,000 Ghana cedis, or to a term of imprisonment not exceeding 2 years, or both, the fine and the imprisonment, and is qualified for a period of 5 years from the date of expiration of term of imprisonment from being registered as a voter or voting at an election. So apart from the fact that what you have done is illegal, you could go to jail for it or be made to pay a penalty for it, you could actually also be barred from voting or carry yourself as a registered voter. So that's a nugget we are bringing to you to get your mind averted to the fact that if you do flout this particular regulation, you are definitely going to be dealt with according to law. So be mindful now that we know we are just a few days away from the elections. Pay particular attention to that. So that's just by way of drawing your attention to a very important component of what we need to do as citizens, as registered voters, as people who are going to take decisions for the country. Do not flout this particular regulation. And between now and December 7, we'll be throwing these out every now and then so you know which laws you stay within the remit of the law so you do not flout any of them. You're still watching Election360. Away from that, let's go straight to some crunch politics. The New Patriotic Party's presidential candidate, Dr. Mahmoud Bawumia, has reiterated his commitment to creating jobs for the Ghanaian youth. According to Dr. Bawumia, if he is given the mandate to be President of the Republic on December 7, he would introduce bold, business-friendly policies and solutions. Dr. Bawumia was speaking at a youth engagement event in the Borteman Sports Complex, which is in Accra. And that actually took place last night. It was live on TV3. Let's bring you some highlights of what exactly he's been saying that was subjected to some further analysis.
To the young voters of Ghana, I will say to you, do not switch off. I ask you to get involved. December is about you. December is about who can deliver for you, for your future, whom you trust, who has the integrity, the vision, the energy, the competence, the sense of where the world is today and your place in it, who has the humility to serve you and the decency not to insult you. I shall plead with you to make an informed choice. It is a choice between the one who had his chance and blew it and the other who is asking for a similar chance but to deliver with it, which is me. The decision is yours to make, not to bring back what was discarded in the past, but to vote for your future. If your priority is, as I suspect, about how to build strongly on the economic recovery that is before us, then I will plead with you to vote for me because of the vision and solutions that I have for you and the country and the leadership discipline and determination that I possess to see them through. When I say to you today that your concerns and aspirations are my top priority items, I mean it from every sinew of my body. Indeed, I have been consistent right from the onset in making the destiny of the youth of Ghana my utmost priority.
Right, so that is Dr. Mahmoud Bawumia. Key things he talked about were jobs, fixing the economy, helping create an enabling environment for startups to also thrive. Also touched on the importance of ensuring that the economy is heavily digitized. It will cut down on corruption. Before we go to some of the specific details Dr. Bawumia had been outlining to the youth, let's look at what exactly the Afrobarometer survey also talked about. Now, you'll recall that Afrobarometer did a national survey, talked to about 2,400 people with a margin of error between plus or minus 2, and then came to some specific areas they believe should be of concern to policymakers. The basis for an Afrobarometer report is to ensure that the voices of the populace influence policy. So on the youth subject, or the issue of youth and what really bothers them, let's bring you some specifics of what Afrobarometer found out. They said that, for instance, the youth are not fully represented in the policy-making process, according to the latest report. So it means that anytime policy decisions are being made at the very top, the youth are heavily disenfranchised in making their voices known or their thoughts known in crafting policy decisions. Also, the African youth are significantly less likely to express their dissatisfaction and preferences at the ballot box. And you can recall that across the continent, specifically from the eastern side of the continent of Africa, maybe Kenya, the youth were up in arms against the government for a number of reasons. Here in Ghana, the Ghanaian youth have also expressed themselves violently, and it is because they do not trust that their voices can be heard at the ballot box, or they can influence any decision when they go to vote. So they find alternative ways of expressing themselves. Again, the Afrobarometer found out that the African youth trail behind older generations by 7 to 12 percentage points in other forms of political engagement. There are several forms of political engagement, including even employment, and what this is deducing is that the youth, when you compare the age demographics, people are older than your youth, or people outside the youth bracket are a lot more involved in everyday political activities than the youth, so defined. And so they are saying that the youth are trailing behind older generations by 7 to 12%, and especially in their engagement in political activities. So if there's a rally, there's a decision to be made, there's a creme of political activists meeting. If you look at the age difference, the youth form very little percentage of that grouping, and that's a concern that they have raised. Also, 63% of those old enough to vote in their countries last election say they did so, compared to 78 to 84% of older cohorts. People who are old enough to vote, so that is in Ghana from 18 years and above, who are old enough to vote. What this survey is saying is that 63% of those people actually voted, as compared to 78 to 84%. So there's a wider gap of people who could vote or can vote or are legitimately in line to vote. However, they do not do so. Just about 63% do actually go, join the queue, and express their vote. Away from that, it says African youth, those aged between 18 and 35, and in many African countries, that's the age range they use to measure youth. Those between the ages of 18 and 35 rank unemployment and management of the economy as their topmost priority for urgent government action, and large majority see their government as failing to acknowledge these issues or address them. People between the age demographic of 18 and 35 believe that the key issues that bother them the most, that they expect governments to work on, is unemployment and management of the economy. Unemployment, the economy. Unemployment and the economy. They go hand in hand. If you have a heavily employed society, clearly you've reduced unemployment and you will not be having these kinds of challenges. But those who are the youth, and Dr. Bawumia has been addressing some of them. You know that in the camp of the NDC, John Mahama, after the NDC launched their youth manifesto with specific targeted solutions to youth-related problems, John Mahama also met the youth at the Bukom Boxing Arena and engaged them answering a number of their questions. Similar thing played out yesterday. Dr. Bawumia met the youth. Why is this important? Because if you look at the general youth demographic, the youth population is the widest in Ghana. Out of the 18 million people who are registered to vote, well over 50% of them, almost 60%, are within the youth bracket. So it's a very important demographic that both parties, or at least political parties, need to be specific in targeting them with promises or policies that will endear them to vote either way. So again, the youth say the two things that bother them the most: unemployment and the management of the economy. And then finally, almost two-thirds, that's 64% of the youth, prefer democracy to other kinds of government. So again, if you reference the case of Kenya, a number of the youth that poured out on the streets were against the government of the day. But the Afrobarometer, which is a continent-wide survey, focused on the fact that would you prefer democracy to other forms of government? And a whopping 64%, more than half of the youth surveyed, say that they prefer democracy as against maybe a military regime or any other form of government, be it autocratic or not. They just want democracy. However, within the democracy governance, there are specific issues they will hopefully like government to be dealing with. So those are the key issues that the Afrobarometer found out. Now let's try and find out how that ties in with what Dr. Bawumia said when he addressed the youth. So you recall yesterday we indicated that he met the youth, gave a long itinerary of what he has done as vice president, what he intends to do, and then there was a question and answer session. And in taking a closer look at the NPP manifesto, you would also say that they actually also focused in the manifesto on youth and job creation. So let's take you through some of the key issues that the vice president raised. He says with over 60% of Ghana's population being under the age of 35, so recall that the age demographic we talked about, 18 to 35 years, this has been acknowledged by Dr. Bawumia. He says those within or under the age of 35 prioritizing strategies that will leverage their energies, skills, creativity, and their intellect remains a core strategy for the NPP. What exactly are these core strategies he's referencing? So again, he talked about the need for that. He says, this is why our entire job creation strategies have been directed to creating youth-focused jobs and empowering the youth wing with the knowledge, resources, and skills they need to run their own small businesses or stay at the top of the labor market. From this, you can easily deduce that the party acknowledges the youth group, that they are important. In fact, they make about 60% of the voter population, and that is why they are deliberately focusing on specific areas they believe would inure to the benefit of the youth. But when you say this is actually quite vague. It's very broad, very open. Are there specifics where you can take maybe specific areas where you have a lot of youth activity, maybe sports? What exactly will the NPP be doing when it comes to sports, which engages a lot of the youth? Tourism, we have a lot of youthful people there as well. So maybe if we have sector-specific answers, then we can say that we are making progress in that regard. But he acknowledges that they are creating youth-focused jobs, empowering the youth with the knowledge, resources, and skills they need to be able to stay on top of the labor market. Again, they intend to create a business-friendly environment with the right policies to stimulate growth, increase production, and create jobs. Again, this, some people will say, is just mere rhetoric. It's just words. Of course, you know that when you have a huge youthful population, in fact, the youth bulge in the country has been increasing over the last decade. This group of people, what exactly do you want to do for them beyond just say, we will stimulate growth? How do you stimulate? How are you going to do that? Which specific areas do you intend to, drive solutions to the concerns of the youth? Here are some of the things he says he has already done and they intend to do if he becomes president. He intends to train 1 million youth in digital skills. He intends to create jobs through private sector construction and infrastructure development, industrialization, and agribusiness. Create jobs through the tax amnesty program. Again, maybe they definitely would need to do more explanation of this rather than just putting English words together. Because if you say you're going to create jobs through tax amnesty program, there is an explanation for this, I'm sure. If you go in detail in the NPP manifesto, for instance, where they say they will take off the taxes in some sectors. For instance, for startups, there are certain taxes that if you're starting a business, you need to go through or you need to pay. He's saying he'll take off some of those taxes to make it a lot easier for you. But the specifics need to come from the administration, not from some of us. Again, they say they'll create jobs, job creation. It's a major talking point across the political divide and has been a major talking point for all politicians for a long time now. But if you say create jobs, what are the specifics? Here he says we'll create jobs for artisans. So he goes to mention carpenters, masons, welders, etc., and built environment professionals to maintain public infrastructure through a revived and resourced persons with disability, PWDs. So this is very specific, where he says that people with disabilities will be taken through these kinds of specific trainings if they are capable. We'll have a lot more carpenters, a lot more masons, a lot more welders, people who are disabled in other ways but can still function in some of these specific sectors. They will enable them to do so. And also the built environment professionals, people who are in the construction industry more or less, to maintain public infrastructure. Maintenance culture in the country is terrible. What we are deducing from this is that government is saying that there is a segment of the youth that we can empower, train, so that they will be like maintenance officers. Be sure if there's a bridge somewhere that needs attention, they quickly get the expertise, who should generally be youthful people or people with the expertise to fix the problem, to go and do that. And not just this, but several others, they've indicated that they are training people directly to solve those problems. Create SME jobs with the introduction of the SME bank. Small and medium enterprises, that is what he's saying. They are going to create a bank for small and medium enterprises. And clearly, we know that those who are within the startup bracket, many of them are the younger generation. So this is what the NPP believes would incentivize them to want to vote for them. They say they'll create jobs through the mineral industry and its value chain, aluminium, gold, lithium, manganese, etc., salt. So salt specifically I can speak to because in the Ada areas, which is our biggest salt mining area, we have a youth bulge there who say that because there is an institution or a company that has taken most of the jobs and is intended to employ them, when they do not have those employments, they are within a natural resource area but not have the capability or the know-how to do that themselves. You can even extend this into the minerals area where he's talking about places where we currently have issues of galamsey, which is a major national conversation. It is concerning because the youths there say that if they do not go to do the galamsey, they have no jobs. That many of you have described as a silly excuse. The fact that you are polluting the water for the many doesn't mean that you saying you don't have a job, you should be left to go on destroying a resource that should benefit all of us. However, the government is saying one way to address the galamsey challenge would be to create jobs through mineral industry and value chain. There's an entire value chain and the need for technology in some of these areas where the youth can be taken through the right processes and procedure in helping them, if they intend to, go into some of these mining activities, they will be doing so a lot more responsibly as against the kind of irresponsibility we have seen on the part of a number of Ghanaians and political activists or political faces who are hiding in the background and destroying our water body. So these are the key issues on job and job creation and the youth that the NPP manifesto is focusing on. If you take this and you juxtapose that with the Afrobarometer survey that focused also on a number of things, including the youth, then you can draw some parallels and say, yes, this party or that party has a specific target or a specific solution targeted at the youth. Their biggest issue we've indicated is unemployment and the economy. And from what we've told you or just brought to you, you are the final decider. Are you convinced from the NPP's manifesto and from Dr. Bawumia's engagement regarding what they intend to do? We'll be happy to hear your thoughts on these issues in the comment section. Do let us know. It's part of the show. This is Election 360. Your comments are also very important. Do let us hear them. You're watching the show live on the studios of TV3. Let's shift our attention to some other issues still in the camp of the NPP though, but this time it is Second Lady Samira Bawumia who has been actively campaigning for her husband and the NPP. Now she has called on voters in the Zongo communities to support the New Patriotic Party to retain power, addressing a deba of Muslim leaders, traditional authorities and party supporters in the New Drabing North constituency. The Second Lady emphasized the party's track record of goodwill in governance.
The Eastern region has become a critical region for the NPP, one of its stronghold.
I will not take you for granted. I will show you respect. I will wait for you.
Eastern Regional Minister Seth Kwame Champong cautioned party supporters against complacency as the December 7th elections approach.
About you know them young countries you're winning way. The person you as a patron for. Na baby as a ukobia, udipebia na dwe yeah. He did this year before. I said I am a ya metia and say, me dey buy me nya. The Sram Muma Fasa Casaro and Yakasa young Kosho Casa. And I'm in a regional minister. Yet, about where we be.
It's interesting what some politicians say during electioneering period. He's saying that if you're a voter, stop saying that since your government came into power, you've not had anything. But many of such political talk and campaign conversations will be coming your way right after this break. This is Election 360. Do stay with us.
the show that brings finality to all the critical issues. It is the stage where all the facts are checked, issues thoroughly interrogated, opinions shaped, and debates settled. But over here, we do more than just talk. We resolve problems. We hold those in power accountable. We address all the key happenings in society, from politics to health to education to everything you deem important. And we will center the voice of the ordinary Ghanaian. This is the show that sets the agenda.
Agenda shows Mondays at 9 p.m. on TV3. TV3, first in news.
Our mission here at TV3 is that the news comes first, and that's the promise of News Central.
With reporters every corner of the country
and experts across the
the former President Donald Trump. It is razor thin. We are uncertain. The pollsters are unable to call which way the U.S. elections is likely to swing, although it looks as though the odds are favoring Donald Trump. That will actually be quite surprising. However, there are some similarities between what's happening in the U.S. and what's happening in Ghana, and similar questions. For instance, well, we'll come to that when we go to the U.S. Let's now go on a campaign trail and speak to Komla Kluche. Before Komla joins us, let's find out how the OT region, where John Dramani Mahama is headed now, has been voting over time. Why is John Mahama going there? One, because politically, you would also want to touch base across the country with everywhere you are assured of some votes. And this is also more important because Dr. Mahmoud Bawumia, the NPP flag bearer, left there a few days ago. And so more or less, those who are looking at it from a different perspective will say John Mahama is actually going to water down any kind of impact that Dr. Mahmoud Bawumia has made in the OT region. But the OT region has predominantly voted for the NDC. And the trends show that. From 96, when Chairman Jerry John Rawlings got over 90% of the total votes cast, since then, it's been a very cozy ride for the NDC, although they've had some dips and troughs. For instance, also, the New Patriotic Party had their lowest in 96. Since then, they've had some kind of up and down movement in terms of total voter turnout, and specific years like the 2008 elections, when John Evans Atta Mills of blessed memory and leader of the NDC became president, the NPP's votes in the OT region actually appreciated. The NDC, although they won the national polls or they won the region, had their least vote ever until 2020. 2020, just last elections we were held in the country, the NDC had its smallest amount of voter percentage in the OT region. And take a look at it. When we enlarge it and put it on your screens, you'd see that in 2020, the NDC had 62.8%, let's say 63%. And that is the least they've had since 2008, when NDC came into power. So although you can safely say it goes in favor of the NDC, the numbers have fluctuated and is actually even coming further down. So the NPP also over time have had 28%, 34%, 28%, 34%, and 35%. The last election in 2020, NPP had 35%. This is significant because it was in 2020 that a new region was created, the OT region. It was broken away more or less from the Volta region, which had predominantly been a safe region for the NDC. Now, when the OT region was taking off, some believe, some pollsters and election observers believe that the numbers of the NPP inched up marginally from 34.6 to 35.7 because that increased because of the fact that they acknowledged that they needed a region of their own and actually created the region for them. So it was more like a thank you for the government for creating that region. And beyond that, the Vice President, Dr. Mahmoud Bawumia, has gone there on a number of occasions to reiterate why the people need to give the mandate to the NPP. John Mahama also believes that, look, this is a region that is safely ours. We do not intend to lose it, so we need to intensify work there. It is very unwise for any party to think that because you have consistently won over time, it is safe for you not to even go back there and campaign. So the NDC is doing well to up its numbers. And this is just a bar graph representation of the numbers I showed to you, where consistently the NDC, which is in the green color, has had a very comfortable vote margin. But if you look at beyond 2008, when the NPP had 34.1, they also inched up again, and the closest they've had to that is 35.7 in the 2020 elections. So in 2024, the dynamics are likely to change. What else will the people be looking out for to inform their voting decisions? Will these numbers increase or decrease? That is one reason why the various candidates have crisscrossed that particular region a number of times. Hopefully we'll get Komla Kluche on the line, who is embedded in the campaign of John Dramani Mahama. We're told that he's arrived there already, so let's listen to some of the key sights and sounds of John Mahama, the NDC flag bearer. It's quite a rousing welcome that John Mahama is receiving in the OT region. Shortly, we'll speak to our correspondent, or hopefully we'll get him before the show ends to let us know what the itinerary looks like for John Mahama in the OT region. Time now, though, for Constituency Watch. Right, so on Constituency Watch today, we are focusing on a particular constituency. It is a seat the NDC has shown dominance, winning at every general election. The NPP, however, takes solace in the fact that it has won that seat once, even though it was during a by-election. Rama Smith gauges the mood ahead of December 7th.
Amenfi West constituency is considered a safe NDC seat, having won the presidential election 6 consecutive times. For the parliamentary seat, it was only the 2003 by-election following the resignation of the then Member of Parliament Abraham Kofi Asante that NPP's Agnes Sonfo won by 9,218 votes, representing 63.9% of the total valid votes. She, however, lost the 2004 general elections to NDC's John Jetia, who won with 15,233, representing 52.10%, whilst Agnes Sonfo had 13,108, representing 44.90%. The constituency is largely a cocoa-growing area, which unfortunately is gradually being overwhelmed with galamsey activities. The residents say they are not happy with the performance of their current Member of Parliament, Eric Affo. They say he is complacent because he thinks their seat is safe.
We have MPs who go and sit, and when we count the number of MPs, the only thing we have is that he's a Member of Parliament. Have you ever heard Amenfi West or Asenkigwa making the news because of an issue our MP has raised in Parliament or on any national issue? No. If you haven't done that, then it means that we sent you or we sent the wrong person.
I don't see MPP, NDC in name developing Amenfi. What I see is the people we send into MPP and NDC to come and develop Amenfi. Because everybody is taking it to their areas. So are we sending the right person who can advocate, who can bring attention to the constituency to lead so that we get our fair share?
This year, the incumbent MP, NDC's Eric Affo, is going to meet NPP's Ignatius Kwesi Afrifa come December 7. No other party or independent candidate has yet popped up. Many of the constituents say they will base their vote on the state of their roads come December 7. We want the one who will repair our roads. Both parties A and B promised but failed to repair the roads. So we now have to look for an alternative who will repair the roads and also be honest with us. It's been more than 35 years since both the NPP and NDC took charge. We have seen nothing better, especially with our roads, yet we pay taxes. Our roads are bad, so which criteria will I use to vote? No one is worthy of my vote. I will base my vote on the free senior high school and vote for NPP. I have been able to educate my child because of that. Irama Smith, TV3 News, Western Region.
All right, so before we come to the specific numbers of the Western, of Amenfi West, let's go back to Komla Kluche and pick his thoughts on the campaign of John Dramani Mahama. We're told it's heading the OT region. Komla, thank you for joining us. First of all, what's the itinerary of John Mahama like in the OT region?
Well, quite a very tall one. Today, which is the day one of it, he is in the Biakuya constituency, as I speak specifically, Kwame Krum. From Kwame Krum, he will be doing a mini deba in Damba in the Karachi East constituency. Then he would go to Ehiamanchini in the Karachi West constituency. Then later he will be doing Banda in the Karachi Intramural constituency. I must say that he arrived just a short while ago from the Greater Accra region, Accra, where yesterday he had to quickly dash to Accra and take part in that peace campaign, which was organized by the Ghana Pentecostal Council, the Christian Council, and the Chief Imam's Office. In fact, he's been responding to a lot of attacks on him that he's abandoned the northern region and fled to the Greater Accra region or wherever because it's not looking good for him. I must say, being on a campaign with him, the itinerary was actually altered because of the persistent calls from the Ghana Pentecostal Council and then the Christian Council as well as the Chief Imam's Office. I recall even yesterday around 10 in the morning, one of the organizers called inquiring whether the old man was on his way en route to Accra. But let's listen specifically to what John Mahama has been saying just a short while ago in Kwame Krum of the Biakuya constituency on this attack on him.
Karaga, Pentecostal and Charismatic Council, any Chief Imam Office, every say Yemra Sa Jumedianity. Mija, Mejuma na me yan was and I'm a bank and a bayer. We could do what? President Amma, Vice President Amma, Monson Amoshe Bambo for so. Anka Chese ye ka asumdwe ewa battle one. And also Muja will be number. Na Yebusa say Aden na Omampenia be the chamber. Yes, you know, yeah, youth program ochre se obeye mampania senia obenya ejuma ama emabuna ye na abra NDC efia baimu na enkrofo ni ejuma ye ewo Ghana ha nyina na ye 8.4%. 8.4%. If you watch here, mobet so sa unemployment figure no, if 8.4%, akodru 14.7%, akakakra medru 15%. Inti achese emabunu no more eneni ejuma ye. Inti anka ubetimi aye hu bibia anka if watch instead of say unemployment no be 8.4%. Afro Surround will do 14.7%. And can was say ever for mom. Yankotia. Also, we're creating more than 2 million jobs.
Right. So, Komla, we just had John Dramani Mahama there, and you've also rolled out his itinerary for the rest of the day for us. Thank you very much, and I will definitely be coming back to you in subsequent programs for the latest regarding that campaign. Komla Kulche is our man on John Dramani Mahama's campaign trail. You're still watching Election360 live on TV3. And like we indicated before we went to Komla, we had just played a constituency for you in the Western region, which is one of the key swing regions in the country. Our focus is on the Amenfi West constituency. How has it been like during the last few electioneering period? Joining me in studio is Alfred Okansi. Thank you, Alfred.
Always welcome, brother.
Let's delve into the numbers. So people of Wasa Amenfi constituency just do not seem to agree with anything NPP, is it?
Well, you can safely say that, but if you take into consideration the outcome of that by-election in 2003, after the resignation of the incumbent member of parliament at the time, Abraham Kofi Asante, then that would alter that position in a bit because the NPP won that by-election. But you must understand the architecture and then also the makeup of this constituency. It shares boundaries with this controversial Amenfi Central constituency that we're talking about now, with one of them, their MP being one of 4 MPs in the eye of the storm and what is happening in parliament. And the behavior of the constituents there is not very different from what you see in Amenfi Central. Reason being, the Amenfi Central and Amenfi West areas have mostly stuck with the NDC when it comes to elections. That is the central and also the western part of the western region. You would see that parting over time in areas such as Asenkregwa, predominantly now been taken over by Galamsey, but it was a predominantly cocoa community, cocoa growing community, and areas like Samreboy. Samreboy is also one area there as well that is heavily farming oriented. There's in Kwantakesi, and then also these areas such as the Esikuma areas as well. All those areas you would find in these specific localities that have their voting pattern beyond just looking at the constituency as a whole. But if you look at it from 1996 and the year 2000, the member of parliament who won that election, that's Abraham Kofi Asante, on the ticket of the NDC, resigned in 2003. That led to that by-election in that year. But in 2004, the NDC restored its hold in that constituency and won that election in 2004. But guess what? Abraham Kofi Asante showed up again. After winning the seat for the NDC in 1996 and 2000, and he resigned, he joined the NPP. Does that ring a bell? Look at Amenfi Central. Peter Kwachiaka contested on a ticket of the NPP in the year 2004. Then he went independent in 2008, joined the NDC in 2016 and won the election and won it again in 2020. He's an incumbent MP. Abraham Kofi Asante...
And he's now going independent.
Yes. Abraham Kofi Asante won this Amenfi West constituency for the NDC in the year 1996, won it again in 2000, resigned from the party, and he showed up again in the year 2020. In 2020, he contested Eric Affle, the incumbent MP, in the 2020 election. And let's look at the 2020 election outcome. Take a look at this. It's just about 2,000 difference between the NDC and the NPP. Well, but the NPP has changed its candidate. Abraham Kofi Asante is not the one contesting for the NPP You have one that's Ignatius Kwesi Frifa. He's a logistics, company owner who has done quite some work in the area. But then again, if you look at why Abraham Kofi Asante resigned, and the reason why the constituents tilted towards him was because he had some misgivings with the NDC. So the NPP feels confident going into this election because of these results in the year 2020, because it was close, even though it has been the stronghold of the NDC. If you have a result like this in an election where it's just about a little over 2,000 difference, you would want to flex your muscles going into the subsequent election. But bear in mind, if you want to understand the patterns of a constituency, you look at the individuals who are contesting, the political parties trend in terms of the voting pattern over the period, and then also the strength of the candidate himself. So if Abraham Kofi Asante, a former member of parliament who won twice on the ticket of the NDC, contested on ticket of the MPP and got this, does that mean that the party can still have confidence in Ignatius Kwesi Frifa to pull these numbers going into the year 2024? It's a big question because Eric Afful is an incumbent MP. This is the third time he's going. He won in 2016, won in 2020. He's going into this 2024 election with this behind him, that he
so his best odds would be to increase this tally.
Absolutely.
And hopefully, if even we split the difference from the 2020 elections, he is likely to still get a sizable chunk. However, if based on the executive incumbency of the NPP government, they're able to back the NPP candidate in the person of Ignatius Kwesi Frifa, then this man, the NDC candidate, is likely to lose some of these votes. It's still up for grabs in the Amenfi West constituency, which, according to Alfred's analysis, is very dicey. Safe, but not too safe for the NDC.
They can't go to sleep on this
at all, and the NPP is trying to push and make inroads in there. Well, we'll see how it plays out, and like we indicated, on Constituency Watch on Election360, the next constituency might just be yours, so you want to make a date to watch this show every weekday at 11 a.m. just before 12. We'll wrap it up. And you also can be a contributor to this conversation so we get to know what's happening specifically in your constituency. Thank you very much, Alfredo Kanse, for passing through. Right, you're still watching Election360. Let's take a quick flight to the United States of America. Things are heating up in the US of A with barely 24 hours to the elections. It is a straight fight between the Republicans candidate and the former president, Donald J. Trump, and the Democratic candidate and current Vice President, Kamala Harris. Donald Trump addressed a rally at the swing state of Pennsylvania, accusing the government of forging unemployment figures. Let's listen to him.
Fraudulently into our employment numbers were fake. They're fake. And the press barely reported it because they're fake. They're worse than the politicians. Honestly, they're worse than the politicians. They're worse than the politicians, and they're being caught. That's why their approval ratings are so low. They're being caught. I think it was a great thing I did for the country, because I don't think people, before I came along, nobody talked this way. But they're fake. And we need a fair press. And we don't need a ruthless press. We need a fair press. And sometimes that will be ruthless. But they didn't report this, or barely reported it. So they fraudulently put in fake job numbers. And the information was supposed to come out after the election. In other words, any time after 3 days from now, because then it would.
Right, so that's Donald Trump, who's seeking to come back. He was a one-time president seeking re-election to come back, going against the Democratic candidate Kamala Harris, who has also wrapped up her campaign in the swing state of North Carolina, insisting that Donald Trump does not have a plan or any policy to help the people of the United States. She was speaking also later in an interview with Roland Martin.
About the people who are going to be watching this interview. I invite everyone always, and again, watch his rallies. He will talk full-time about himself. He will talk about his personal grievances, and he will not talk about you and any plan that he has for you or your children or your future.
How does it make you feel when he trashes black cities? So in 2020, he talked about voting in Fulton County, Atlanta, Philadelphia, Detroit. There was a partial recount of Wisconsin, only in Milwaukee. The comments that he just made about Detroit basically being a living hell.
Oakland, D.C., Chicago.
Pretty damn ad.
Come on.
Come on. Pretty good damn ad y'all dropped out. I actually liked it. Jamel Hill and I talked about it. But again, he's singling out cities where there are significant African Americans, and that's who he's talking about.
Yes.
Black people.
Yes. Yes.
All right, so that's Kamala Harris, who's also hoping that she'll continue the work of Joe Biden, the current U.S. president, who is not running again, clearly because he stepped down due to, his frailty as he had aged well past 80. So it's a big issue in the U.S. Quickly, the candidates and their profiles. This is Donald Trump. He's seeking re-election. He's a one-time president, or for the 5th president, and is hoping to come back again. And then also Kamala Harris, who is a former attorney general, current vice president, 49th vice president of the U.S., and is hoping to be given the nod by the Americans. Here on Election 360, we will later do a deep dive into the U.S. elections for you. Also on News Central, they will bring you further details of the U.S. elections. I am Martin Esiedudate. As always, hasta la vista.